My name is Alex Cardenas and currently the chairman for Imperial Irrigation District. I lived in Imperial County my entire life, currently 52 years old and a lifelong resident of Imperial County. Well, when it comes to the Salton Sea, what I do know is that these are very exciting times because we have really cracked the code when it comes to providing both federal and state funding when it comes to the Salton Sea. What we do know is that we have some pretty serious hydrology issues as it relates to the Salton Sea. So hydrology is everything when it comes to sustaining habitat and public health. So the Salton Sea for the longest time has been dealing with kind of ebbs and flows when it comes to the Salton Sea because we're so dependent on the hydrology and Mother Nature. So it's been quite the challenge. There's been some water transfers that we've had to deal with. And because of those water transfers, there's also mitigation that's required, and it's actually law. So we've kind of struggled getting those projects off the ground. But what I can tell you today, and this is why I'm super excited about the Salton Sea, is that those projects are happening. We have a lot of equipment, heavy duty equipment, moving around at the Salton Sea, creating shallow habitat and also addressing some of the public health issues as it relates to dust. So I do say it's exciting. It is an environmental challenge, but it's now becoming an environmental asset. And that's because of our partners in DC, our partners in Sacramento, and also the Imperial Irrigation District, where we have made it a priority to address those issues as they relate to a receding shoreline. So the number one challenge for me is public health. You have a receding shoreline. The shoreline is actually shrinking, and it's exposing some of the dust. And that dust is very, very dangerous, especially when it comes to the size of the particulate matter, which falls from PM10 or PM2.5. That is so small that usually when you inhale it, you can't cough it out. And because you can't cough it out, that's what leads to some of the asthma rates. So as the hydrology is impacted, usually in a negative way because of some of the droughts that we're dealing with, that receding shoreline exposes more shoreline and it allows for some of that dust to become airborne. I currently represent both what's a shoreline and a fence line community. The shoreline community being Salton City, the fence line community being the city of Westmoreland. And when we have dust events or whiteout events along the Salton Sea, those are very, very dangerous situations, especially vulnerable populations like children and seniors. So we need to double down on those efforts, especially when it comes to public health in mitigating the exposure of that playa. So that's kind of the main concern for me is public health. The second and almost equally important is habitat. When you have a receding shoreline, you deal with some negative consequences related to habitat. So, it is part of the Pacific Flyway. Over 400 species depend on the Salton Sea. And when you're dealing with hydrology issues and salinity, those impacts tremendously the habitat. So we need to ensure that we are addressing some of those mitigation challenges and providing projects that bring habitat restoration to protect that ecosystem at the Salton Sea, which is an absolute uncut gem. I spent a lot of time out there, love it out there. It's one of the best places to experience a sunset in Imperial County. So I'm going to start in the Southwest. Number one, IID. IID is really showing a leadership role when it comes to the Salton Sea. We're one of the largest landowners at we are one of the largest landowners along the Salton Sea or in the Salton Sea area. And that's important because we have a social responsibility when it comes to our property. Although we may not have the checkbook to deal with large capital projects and also the operations and maintenance that's involved in these large capital projects, what we do allow for is access to our land. And so when it comes to IID, and when the state or the federal government kind of taps us on the shoulder and say, hey, we want to implement these large capital projects, and we need access to your land, either through the actual land or an easement or right away, it's all thumbs up. We want to work with our partners, both state and federal, and say, yes, we will provide you access to the land so you can implement these large scale projects. So it starts with the IID. IID working with our state and federal partners and saying, yes, you can have access to our land. Let's talk about a project and how can IID contribute to that project. Once we've identified site control through the most vulnerable areas in terms of public health and habitat, now we start going to the drawing board in terms of projects. So the state, under the leadership of Secretary Crowfoot, California Natural Resources Agency, has invested tremendously. Over $400 to $500 million right now at the Salton Sea on the southwest side of the Salton Sea. They're actually building a 4,000 acre shallow habitat project. This is critical for habitat restoration. It's also important because it's one of the most emissive areas when dusk comes. So 4,000 acres working at the delta of the New River and bringing habitat back. It is quite the project. A lot of partners involved, an incredible workforce out there building and creating habitat, again, with a price tag, actually about $200 million on 4,000 acres that are owned by the IID. So that's going to be a very nice parade float for our community, not only to experience, but also deal with some of the public health issues along the New River Delta. And the important thing is, once this incredible project is built, there's going to be some operations and maintenance money that's involved. So from the state side, just an incredible part in terms of the leadership that's coming out of Sacramento, really around Secretary Crowfoot, his team, Department of Water Resources. Those folks are out there grinding away, bringing this projects, a lot of visibility. And so we anticipate quite a project out there and a commitment to public health and habitat. In regards to the federal government, again, the federal government, who's 40% owner of the property at the Salton Sea, is also making significant headway. And that is through the engagement of the Department of Army Corps. And the Department of Army Corps is in the midst of a 3-year feasibility study. Everybody talks about feasibility studies. Oh, not another feasibility study. This one's significant. And it's significant because once they present the best alternative solution when it comes to the Salton Sea, when they look at the hydrology commitments, we are gonna anchor in a funding partner, a federal funding partner, up to 65%. So they're about in year 2 of the feasibility study. Once they complete their study and they produce what's called a Chiefs report, then we can unlock almost $1 billion from the Department of Defense or from the Army, which has $1 trillion budget, to anchor in a federal funding partner at 65%. It is amazing, and very grateful to be part of that through the Salton Sea Authority, which is a joint power group there that I've been a part of. IID, our state's involved, and also our federal partners. So 2 major components that are taking place at the Salton Sea. You got the SCH, which is the Shallow Conservation Habitat Project, which is $200 million, 4,000 acres, led by California Natural Resources. And then you have the engagement of the Army Corps and us possibly having access to $1 trillion budget once a feasible solution is developed. So super excited. And this is why I believe we've turned the corner in terms of dealing with the Salton Sea in a negative way, and are now moving some serious earth work or doing some serious earthwork at the sea. And again, 2 major goals. 1, public health, and 2, habitat. Well, it's huge. I mean, ultimately, it's the community that's in control. As an elected official, my responsibility is to the constituents. If they're not happy with the job that I'm doing, then they kick me out. So if the community exercises their power, I mean, the community wields a tremendous amount of power, and that is power is through their vote. So, that's the difference between an elected official and an environmental justice nonprofit organization. The nonprofit organization is only really responsible to their board of directors. On the other hand, when you're an elected official and you represent a shoreline or you represent a fence line community, you're at the constituents' mercy. So it's my job as an elected, accountable to the people, is to take their community engagement, not only take it, but provide forums for it and educate them and tell them, look, this is what the federal government is doing. This is what the state's planning on doing. What other information can we provide you to ensure that you're being educated? Because for me, as an elected, it's a 24/7 job. I mean, I am on the hook to those constituents. So what can the community do is, number one, hold me accountable. Number two, exercise that vote. That vote is so important. You can go to directly. I mean, I pride myself on being transparent and accountable. So my caucusing, my canvassing is done in an open forum. We do not. Our board members are very open. The team that I represent, a lot of our engagement and our work is done in public. And we exercise that through our open forums and through our public meetings. That public comment period is so critical. So in terms of the community, first of all, it really starts with them holding me accountable. Number two, me carrying the burden and providing them the public education. Number three, them being able to ask questions. There is a lot of science. There is a lot of legal requirements. So it's both art and science coming together to address a very serious issue at the Salton Sea. Yeah. So one of the agencies that they can consider aside from IID, I think what the community needs to do, and maybe even start with IID and saying, hey, we got thousands and thousands of hay bales at the Salton Sea, and we want to know what is going on. What is happening? You got a sea of hay bales, and they can be a magnet for mischief. Is it working? Well, what's been determined is that vegetation is also incredibly important to mitigating the dust. And in order for vegetation to survive out there, there needs to be a windbreak. And if you're going to plant, vegetation, native vegetation, or vegetation that has science behind proving that they can live in some pretty harsh conditions, we got to give it a chance to survive. So the wind, we have to break that wind somehow. So all that seed is not just, becoming airborne. So one of the concepts that the California Natural Resources Agencies came up with was, hey, let's put these hay bales, let's provide a wind block potentially to some of the vegetation out there, and let's see what we can do. Again, these are some of the most harshest conditions in the world. And what we're trying to do is, maybe introduce some habitat with some very limited hydrology opportunities. So it really starts with, okay, who's responsible for this project? Most of these projects have nameplates on them. Those nameplates say, hey, funded by, and then there's your first person that you can tap on the shoulder and potentially to getting answers. What I can tell you, and social media and the internet doesn't allow really for agencies to operate in a vacuum, because they're moving dirt, they're seeing the action, they're videoing, they're sharing, but usually when a project is out there, they nameplate it. And then in that nameplate, it tells you the funding source, it tells you the agencies, and you can do one or two things. You can tap those agencies on the shoulder and pick up the phone. All of them usually have a PIO, a public information officer, they have a resource manager and say, we want to know what's going on, or why wasn't the community engaged? What you probably will see is that, hey, there was some public outreach, there was some public meetings, here was the agendas about when we talked about this, but maybe we didn't do a job of advertising it. So you could look at those agencies that are nameplated on those signature signage out there, or attend the Salton Sea Authority. The Salton Sea Authority, which we are a member agency of, meets once a month, and they're in between Imperial County, Riverside County, and they're traveling. They'll be in Nyland next week. But the Salton Sea Authority, there are standing agenda items that give you updates. What's happening at Bombay Beach? What's happening at Salton City? They're out there and they're giving updates. There's also an ex officio member. So let me take a step back. The Salton Sea Authority is made up of 2 counties, Imperial and Riverside County, 2 water districts, Imperial Irrigation District and Coachella Valley Water District. It also has a sovereign nation, Torres Martinez. And you have these agencies, they have 2 members with voting interest, and they have updates on the Salton Sea Authority. And so that's a meeting once a month. It's the perfect opportunity to ask questions on what is going on. What is going on in regards to the Salton Sea? It was created to provide information. It's led by Patrick O'Dowd. So what can people do? We can track the Salton Sea agenda. We can also track some of the Imperial County agendas and Riverside County agendas. We can also track some of the irrigation agendas. But most importantly, and we got a great partner, 2 great partners. One is Assemblyman Eduardo Garcia. He's been an advocate. He's been an advocate for the Salton Sea. He's been an advocate for our local communities in Riverside, Imperial County. He has great representation. We can ask him as well, because he has been a champion. He's introducing legislation in 2024 to unlock $175 million for the Salton Sea. He's a great partner. State Senator Steve Padilla. He's another gentleman who's part of our community and a California lawmaker. So when it comes down to who can we talk to, who can we ask, we have California lawmakers that are out there introducing legislation to expedite. And I want the people to measure the success at the Salton Sea possibly on the last 4 years versus the last 20. Because the last 4 years, what I can guarantee you is a couple things. Major signature projects at the Salton Sea, north of $200 million, and also the engagement of the Army Corps to unlock federal funding, significant federal funding to address major projects out there. Yeah, so lithium, it is a major opportunity for our valley. I would love to be a champion of renewable energy. The value that Imperial Valley brings, its natural resources. We are in the natural resource business. We have sun, we have water, we have geothermal, and now we have lithium. And what you have is the Department of Energy's laboratory just came out in late 2023 and put their stamp of approval and said, we are nameplating, there's 3,400 kilotons of lithium at the Salton Sea. That's over 375 million car batteries. If you are serious about decarbonizing the United States, it starts right here in Imperial County. And we, the IID, along with some other key stakeholders, are shepherds to that process. What I can tell you, potentially what we're sitting on, is extracting and recovering lithium in some of the most safest ways known to man. Where the alternative currently is now hard rock mining, evaporation ponds. What we're talking about is lithium recovery, a reinjection of this liquid back, or reinjection of water back into the ground, minus the minerals, extracting it potentially with renewable energy that comes from geothermal, and then truly being a catalyst to decarbonizing the United States. We have some incredible ambitious goals here in the United States and the state of California to reduce that carbon footprint. The last thing I want to do is decarbonize it through hard rock mining and evaporation ponds outside of the United States. We can decarbonize our footprint by using Imperial Valley lithium. But what do we need? We need agencies, we need responsible environmental agencies, lead agencies that are going to ensure that California environmental laws, along with federal laws, NEPA and CEQA, are followed. And so my position is that I believe California has been the leader, the leading state in ensuring environmental laws are protected. What a great opportunity to recover lithium in the state of California under the supervision and guidance of California environmental agencies. In addition, the additional coverage and surveillance is going to come from the federal government. So I'm telling you right now, Imperial Valley Lithium is going to play a critical role in decarbonizing. So if we're really truly serious about decarbonizing, then let's make it happen. Let's follow California environmental laws. Let's follow federal environmental laws, and let's make it happen. Let's create a brand new renewable energy economy. We've done it already. We've done it with geothermal. We have over 500 megawatts of geothermal coming from the Salton Sea, and we've been incredibly responsible. We've done it with solar. We've addressed some solar issues. We are following California law, and we are also providing renewable energy. What I don't want is to continue to push and move forward in combustible type of energy when there's natural renewable energy that we can proceed. There's no doubt in my mind. I believe what the community needs to do is hold those electeds accountable. We don't need other folks coming in here saying, hey, we want to help. We're going to save the day in regard to this process. Look, at the end of the day, those electeds, including me, are the ones that are accountable to the constituents, because the constituents exercise their vote. They have the power. Don't be fooled by other folks coming in here and saying, we want to be the shepherds. We want to be the folks. Those folks are not held accountable to constituents. Now, what we got to do is we got to elect. We have to elect the right people, hold them accountable, and also ask that things be done in a very transparent way. We allow the community to come in, but we also provide the science on what we're doing out here in Imperial County. Absolutely critical. And I'll tell you straight out, IID is the catalyst to the lithium industry. Number one, we own a good chunk of the property. There's what's known as the KGRA, the known geothermal resource area. That known geothermal resource area is an area where geothermal has been recognized. It's the thermal field or the geothermal field. In that geothermal field is where folks are finding the lithium deposits and the lithium mineral. And so because we own the property, a lot of these companies that want to get into the lithium industry are subject to our surface rights and our mineral rights. So they cannot put a shovel in the ground unless we discuss surface rights and mineral rights owned by the IID. In addition, some of that industry requires some water. And so if they're going to access some of our water, there's a discussion that needs to take place. A water supply agreement needs to be followed. In that water supply agreement, there's a checklist of things that need to be completed. And probably the most important thing that needs to be completed, the most important thing that needs to be completed in a water supply agreement is a discussion around protecting our environment. So when you look at surface rights, mineral rights, access to water, being able to understand what their load profile, energy load profile is going to be, and what the impact and their needs are from an energy standpoint, all of that starts and stops with Imperial Irrigation District. And we have a proven record of ensuring that we do follow California law and federal law. In fact, we have a fiduciary responsibility, and I can assure you that our board is extremely sensitive. Not only is our board, but our executive staff is absolutely critical to ensuring that we are following California law, federal law when it relates to the environment. So we have a lot of experience in being able to shepherd that process and also protecting it. And that's why we've been entrusted with these incredible natural resources. You know, it's a great question, a great inquiry, but IID's has known this for years. And that's why one of the things that we successfully have implemented from a policy standpoint is our equitable distribution plan when it comes to water. In that equitable distribution plan, which establishes probably over 90% of our Colorado River water going to ag. 1 out of every 6 jobs here in Imperial County is related to agriculture. And 90%, over 90% of that water is going to that very powerful agriculture industry. Another good portion of that water is also going to our cities, our schools, our churches. And then we set aside another 25,000 acre feet of water for industry. So for Imperial Irrigation District, this is nothing new. We were able to forecast to say, hey, there's industry coming. We need to set aside some water under our equitable distribution plan, set aside water, and then understand what the environmental impacts are. That's already been done. That's already been implemented. That's already been tested. So we've done that proactively. So, you know, who's ever yelling fire in the theater need to be really, really careful about what they're saying. Because what I can assure you is that we've established an equitable distribution plan when it comes to that precious natural resource. What we need to do, if it were to exceed the 25,000 earmark water for industrial, then we need to have that conversation. And the first conversation we're going to have is, what is the impact to the environment? What is the impact to our agricultural industry? What is the impact to our schools, our churches, and our cities? See, IID, we do not think, we're constantly thinking ahead and anticipating what those challenges are going to be. And so that discussion has already been had. That's why we have done this. We've been to the Supreme Court numerous times. I mean, this is why the federal government, through the Department of Interior, down to the Bureau of Reclamation, has entrusted us with 3.1 million acre feet of water. 70% of the Colorado River allotment for the state of California comes here to Imperial counties. And the federal government has entrusted us with that. So when people say, well, what's going to happen to the water? We have a proven track record of being responsible when it comes to that precious natural resources, especially when it comes to water. We are entrusted to put water to a reasonable and beneficial use. And when you violate reasonable and beneficial use, you have some serious problems. And for the last 20 years, we've had a really strong record in ensuring that water that we're entrusted with is being used for reasonable and beneficial uses. So again, I would encourage the public to follow the Imperial Irrigation District, follow the history. And this board in particular and previous boards have done an incredible job in managing that resource. So we're not here yelling fire in the theater when you have a proven track record. We've had folks that wanted to infringe on our water rights, and we have successfully defended them from the state of California to Washington, D.C. And that water right is ironclad, and it does require good governance, and it also requires that we follow the laws. I mean, safety planning, contingency planning, constant evaluation and surveillance. That's the world we live in. Again, California has been a leading state, in my opinion, when it comes to being a leader in protecting the environment. So absolutely, there's a tremendous amount of rigor that's involved in dealing with safety plans and dealing with things. I mean, there's discussions now, about some of the byproducts. There are going to be some byproducts that we are going to have to deal with, lithium. And those discussions need to happen now. They're already happening. And what are we going to do with these byproducts? I don't want to put them on a truck and send them to a toxic, I don't want to put them on a truck and send them to a toxic dump and deal with tailpipe emission. That's not what we're about. So we're looking at ways to address that. We are looking at some of the byproducts that we'll have to deal with. The Imperial County Board of Supervisors play a critical role when it comes to that. So all of those discussions are taking place now. They're taking place. This is not a situation, at least not for us. This is not a situation to bypass environmental law. This is not a situation that we ask for an environmental waiver. That's not what we're asking for. What we're asking is that we follow all environmental laws, all laws that govern this incredible industry. We're not looking for carve-outs. At least Imperial Irrigation District isn't. But what we are saying is, let's do this responsibly, let's do it safely, and let's decarbonize America. I think they're valid concerns in regards to how that information is being shared. I just know that for me, it's a lifestyle. When someone's looking at developing in my community, whether I'm an elected or not, I'm tracking and tracing and providing surveillance because, again, it's a lifestyle. I don't parachute in at the last minute and say, hey, I wasn't informed, or hey, what's going on, or hey, this is an injustice. For me, it's constantly tracking and constantly following up. Again, we have Imperial County, you have Imperial Irrigation District, and you have the Salton Sea Authority, you have California Natural Resource Agencies. All these folks, in my experience, have operated in a very transparent way. They are having the discussions, they are having the engagement opportunities. They have the websites, they have PIOs, they have engagement officers, and I know them very well. And I see the content that they put out. And what I can attest to is that when it comes to our Secretary of California Natural Resources, he is personally engaged when it comes to the Salton Sea. And I give him all the credit for being that shepherd in dealing with California Natural Resources. So I think what we probably need to do to address, and I say again, some of those valid concerns, is we maybe need to consider, number one, providing that content in Spanish. I believe the content needs to be provided in Spanish, just to ensure that folks are being informed, maybe in their native language. The second thing is maybe we do need more workshops. Maybe we do need some NGOs to come in. Maybe we need some non-government agencies to also come in and augment our efforts. Workshops are important. Attendance is even more important. I've seen these workshops done in the day. I've seen them done in the evening. And I can tell you that there is a genuine effort that is being done because I get notice, I get the invites, and maybe I need to do a better job as chairman at the IID. What I can tell you is probably most of the projects on the shoreline are California Natural Resources Agency's projects. What we have is a long-term plan for the Salton Sea. We have projects that are on ground right now, and there is momentum, tremendous amount of momentum. And let me tell you, there is federal and state money coming. And so the conversation now is probably going to change a little bit in regards to, hey, you know what? What are the priorities when it comes to this money? What are you going to use it? What can I point a finger at? I think where we have dropped the ball, me included, is I need to be able to point a finger and say, this is what we're doing here. And we need to really create these parade floats and run them down Main Street in Bombay Beach and Calapat and Westmoreland and Salton City and saying, this is what we're doing, folks. This is what we're taking care of, an environmental challenge and also creating the new industry in Imperial Valley. This is how we're doing it. These are the laws. This is how we address the laws. And this is how we're going to do this in a very safe, responsible, and transparent manner. So, there is concerns. I mean, my concern is that my main concern is I don't want to be, in the, what I call the diamond industry. The last thing I want is people mining out diamonds and then, taking them out of my county or our county and then extracting the refinery process in other places. No, what my goal is and what I want to do is put a fence around the lithium recovery industry and, where the natural resources is here, processed here, used here. I want to use it to decarbonize the border. You got border wait times over an hour. You have cars sitting idle at our border, making a major impact to our airshed. I mean, can you imagine if you had the natural resource here, the manufacturing here, the electric vehicle charging infrastructure here, and instead of people coming across the border to fill their vehicle up with gas, they're now coming across the border to charge their vehicle. And so I want that resource to stay here, be processed here, and used here. And we create this incredible economy. You have interstate, you got Interstate 10 that's just north of us. You got 86, 78, and then you got Interstate 8. That's a tremendous amount of tailpipe emission coming into this airshed. You got renewable energy here. Can you imagine the electric vehicle infrastructure that we could create here, where cars were coming through here, instead of with their tailpipe emission, they're coming here and charging their vehicles. I mean, you look at the exporting commodity, one of the largest exporting commodities that we deal with. How many trucks are running up to Long Beach? And how many trucks are running, east and west and north and south? You see the border. You see the industrial explosion at the border. But why couldn't we use that natural resource, use it to be one of the very few decarbonized port of entries in the United States? So my concerns is that you do not export the natural resource from our community and have some other state benefit from the processing of that. So we need to have that discussion. If you're going to, be here, be part of our family, then you need to make the investment. Let's put Imperial County to work. Let's put Imperial County first. Let's get these apprentice programs. Let's get a skilled workforce. Let's blend the one out of every 6 jobs of ag, and let's start blending it with some of these other alternatives. And so again, it's a tremendous opportunity. So what the concerns that I have is that we continue to build equitable policies that are realistic and feasible and have science behind them so that we can stimulate one of the most disadvantaged communities in the 5th largest economy in the world. Our economy, this is my biggest fear. I don't want to be a county known for its natural resources, but also known for its poverty. And that's what concerns me the most. And the policies that we're making at IID and some of the initiatives that we're starting and completing involve around building a community that people envy. Actually not, because we're strong. Imperial Valley's strong. Imperial Valley's resilient. Imperial Valley's intelligent. And initially, the conversation maybe started that way. But then when they saw the talent, when they saw the policies, when they saw and experienced our passion for the community and economic prosperity and our commitment to the environment, they knew that we won't be pulled in that direction. If they want to come to the Imperial Valley, they have to stay in Imperial Valley. So initially I could have said maybe there were some thoughts around it, and maybe it had a Wall Street mentality, or maybe it had a return on investment mentality. And yes, there was pressures. We know Wall Street pressures, market pressures, yield pressures, but we're not going to be that county. At least IID is not going to be that government agency that says, "Hey, take all our natural resources and be on your way." We've done it with farming, where farms are here, people are working. 1 out of every 6 jobs. We got a $2.6 billion ag industry here in Imperial Valley. We've got over $5 billion crop plus industry when you include tractor sales. So we have a proven record in bringing industry and keeping it here, like we've done with ag. So when they look in comparison, saying, "Hey, you know what? We're gonna deal with all of this natural resources and take it away." No, they tried it with our water and failed. All right, they said, "You know what? We're gonna buy all this property. We're gonna fallow the ground, and all the water savings from Imperial Valley, we're gonna move it over to some of these urban areas along the coast." Guess what? Didn't work. Those people came and gone, and really because of the strength of the IID. The IID, this is not new to the IID. Dealing with corporate industries is not new. What it is, it's new to them, that they're dealing with an incredibly talented, passionate, and community-oriented board members or directors at the Imperial Irrigation District, whose primary goal is Imperial County. And so that's what we've been able really to do, especially in the last 2.5 years, to say, "Hey, we put a fence around our natural resources. You want access to them, you're going to have to do A, B, and C, and you got to put roots in the ground." And kind of an eye opener for some. For others, they said, "We're in. Thank you for the marching orders. Thank you for letting us know. We know where you stand." Because at IID, ethics, morals, and values matter. That's how we operate. Great question. So it's just so exciting. We have turned the corner. We have cracked the codes. We are establishing an identity, a new identity at Imperial Valley or in Imperial County. You're going to have the agricultural industry and the renewable energy come together, and we are going to energize the world. Not only are we going to feed the world, but we're going to energize the world with geothermal and then provide lithium batteries to help us reduce the carbon footprint. And people are not going to know Imperial Valley for its poverty. Not going to be known. Imperial Valley is not going to be known for the environmental injustices. We are going to be known as a community that stands up and asks that the same state and federal laws that provide to Orange County also be applied and executed in Imperial County. We are going to be the renewable energy capital of the world, and someone who took an environmental challenge at the Salton Sea and made it an environmental asset. And we are going to have one of the most beautiful desert communities known to man. It is going to happen. And it's going to happen because of the resiliency of our people who have lived and breathed and drank some of the most toxic waters, toxic air, and have survived. But we're not going to survive anymore. We're going to prosper. And everything hinges on electing the right people who are responsible to the voter. I would caution people, to those bearing fruit and those yelling fire in the theater, and instead holding their electeds whose responsible and livelihoods depend on their constituents' vote, holding them accountable to protecting our community, bringing economic prosperity, and creating a community that people envy. And so we have those players. At least we've held the line, and we have a bunch of new people also coming up. That's exciting. It's exciting to see people document. It's exciting to see people learn more about things like the pupfish and saving the pupfish, because we are becoming a community that wants to see our environment protected. We want to prosper, and we want to, grow our families in this area. So again, I really see us being not a rising star, but a shooting star. What I can tell you personally, when I go to DC or go to Sacramento, they know about IID. They know about Imperial County. They know about the Salton Sea. They know about Lithium Valley. And a lot of that's not our credit. It's the community holding me accountable, saying, you don't do your job, we'll elect you out. What keeps me up at night is ensuring that we are listening to our community, that we are ensuring that we're holding our state and federal partners accountable. And that's happening today because of the tremendous amount of pressure that voters, not necessarily nonprofit organizations, but it's the voters that call me and say, hey, what are you doing here? And why are you doing this? And why wasn't I informed? That's what I love about our rates. When our energy rates are being challenged and people are struggling with their energy rates, I get the calls. They don't go through a nonprofit or organization. They don't go through an extra step. They call us directly and we respond, because those are the ones that vote for us. So that's the exciting part. We are growing. Our advocacy is through the roof. Our relationships in DC and the state of California are at all-time high. And I'm excited to be part of the IID. And we are going to truly change how people view Imperial County.